In this part of the program, what we're going to be discussing is harnessing the power of value creation. How do you present the value that your product or your process or your service offers to a customer? In order to do that, we're going to be talking about some various things. What we will explore today will include identifying and addressing customer pains and gains. What hurts your clients if they don't have your product, and what is going to make your clients' lives better essentially if they get your product or if they use your service. We'll talk about how to align your products or your services with customer expectations, that what they hope to get from your service or product is exactly what they obtain. We're also going to be talking about how that is done through enhancing your value propositions for clarity and success. As we go along with the slides, we'll explain exactly what the value proposition is. It's essentially a promise that you're making to some extent. Now, where exactly is the value in a product? Where is the value in a service? How do you determine what that value is and how to present it to your customers? We won't really go into that much detail because we don't have that much time. We'll see some of the detailed parts in actual practice a couple minutes from now. But first, what exactly is a value proposition and why is it important? You can think of your product or your service as a promise that you're making to those who decide to come to you to use that product, to get that product, or to use that service. Now, the value proposition is, to put it simply, we'll call it a statement that explains your promise of value and your wish to deliver solutions. It communicates value effectively to align with your customer's needs, whoever that customer is. And finally, it differentiates your offering from that of the others in the marketplace. If you're selling some fruit juice, why is your fruit juice different from the fruit juice of all the other people that are in the market? You need to articulate that in a way that is simple to understand. Now, let's go through a couple different examples of some value propositions of companies here in Africa. Maybe you'll know some of them, maybe you won't. But let's quickly go through and see what they actually offer, what they propose. First, we have one called Flutterwave, who's there to try and simplify payments across Africa. You can sort of think of their proposition as secure, seamless payment solutions tailored to the African markets. Who they serve is businesses and individuals across Africa, which we can see from the value proposition because it's tailored to the African markets. What is their impact? Their impact is to help overcome payment barriers, enabling businesses to thrive and scale. So we have a company that has a clear focus, a clear direction in which it's trying to go. And that's also one reason why you have the value proposition. On the one hand, it's for your clients. On the other hand, it's also for yourself so that you always have a direction, a vision in which you are going to some extent. Another company is Jumia. I'm sure you all know Jumia. And it's there to help revolutionize online shopping in Africa. The value proposition, you can think of it as affordable, convenient online shopping tailored to African needs. Who they serve is African consumers looking for convenience and affordability. And the impacts they're going to have on the market, or the impact they have on the market, is that they offer a wide range of products and services, creating access in underserved areas. So in areas where people did not have access to some of the products that are on Jumia, they can have direct access to those products by going on the platform, buying, and getting the products sent to them, delivered to them. Quickly, a third company is M-Pesa. Their goal is to drive financial inclusion. So their value proposition, you can think of it as empowering financial inclusion through accessible mobile money services. They came about in a period of time where, even today in many African countries, there isn't that urge to go to the bank to open an account. People don't necessarily want to go through all that process, but they realized that people were willing to put money in their phones and then transfer that money from one person to the other, which essentially was their market. So who they serve is individuals without access to traditional banking. And the impact they have had is really large in Africa. Led to companies like MTN also starting their mobile money and many other companies also starting similar endeavors. But they enable millions to send, save, and manage money easily via mobile phones. So it simplifies that process. These are examples of value propositions for some larger companies. Now, at your level, what can you do? How can you determine your value proposition? What's the first step that's going to allow you to get to that particular stage? There are many tools that can allow you to do that. In our case, we're going to be studying a tool known as the Value Proposition Canvas. It's relatively easy to understand and to utilize, and that's the one we're going to be focusing on. Some key components of the value proposition canvas are, it's broken down mainly into two sections. We have the customer profile. That portion deals with what your customers actually want from your product or service. And then we have the value proposition, which deals with how your product or service is going to solve the problem of those customers. The canvas helps provide clarity and alignment between customer needs and offerings, so that for every customer problem, you can think of a potential solution, and it's there, it's written in a simple format that you can then review whenever necessary. Here we have a small rendering of the value proposition canvas. I believe that'll be on your left, you have the value proposition. On your right, you have the customer profile. Let's start with the customer profile. First, you want to talk about the customer jobs. What are the things that your customer actually needs to do? Then you want to talk about your product and how that product helps the customer do those jobs. Then you want to talk about the customer pains. What are some of the issues in the customer's life that your product can help alleviate? And then within your product, you think of ways to make sure that all the characteristics necessary to alleviate those pains are present. Then finally, you have the customer gains. What are some of the things that maybe the customer would not have thought about, but that you could include in your product, but that will actually make that person or that customer's life better? And then you think of what characteristics you could add to your product or your service so that it can actually be a gain creator, so that it can actually help the customer increase some of those potential gains. You may not get the subtle differences between all of these right now, but we'll go through an example that should be able to allow you to understand a lot better. Before we get to the example though, quick summary. First, what we tend to do is first we try and identify, or at least in our case, what we are going to be doing is we'll try and identify customer pains and gains, aside from, of course, the customer jobs. And then we'll try and map our products or services to solve those pains and amplify the potential gains. And then in the end, we'll try and logically test and refine our propositions to ensure that they actually make some sense. Now, let's try and bring that all together. Let's use an example. In this case, we'll use a hotel. You're trying to create a hotel. Now, one of the things your customer, so the customer job, what he wants to achieve when he gets a hotel might be, of course, he wants to sleep in a secure environment. In this case, we put sleep for cheap but comfortably and attend meetings on time. So here we are going a bit more towards someone that's into business, that's maybe into town for a couple of days and has many meetings to attend. Now, some of the pains that the customer might suffer at maybe some other hotels might be unreliable internet, where in one part of the hotel he has the internet, another part of the hotel he's unable to get it. And also the customer may want to eat at the hotel restaurant, but may think that the meals are expensive. So that may be another pain for some of these customers, because they want things to be done fast. They're going for their meetings. They don't have a lot of time to spend. They don't want necessarily to have to go around town looking for other restaurants. If they can get from the hotel cheap, probably they'll like to get their food from the hotel. When it comes to the gain side, they may want a hotel that's going to increase their productivity and that's going to allow them to have a space where they can easily work, since this would be, for the most part, a work trip for these business people. Now, what you have to do, some of the characteristics you need to put within your products, within your hotel or service, is a good price, since they want to sleep for cheap. You need to make sure that your hotel is business friendly. Potentially, it could offer tailored services for professionals. We'll talk about that a bit later within the other quadrant. Now, since some of the pains they usually have are unreliable internet, which doesn't necessarily allow them to work easily, and expensive meals, which means they may have to go around town looking for other places, You could do it different ways, but first, one thing that you may want to do is make sure that there's high-speed Wi-Fi in all areas of the hotel so that they're always able to have access to their phone or to their laptops, to the internet, and work whenever they need to. You also may need to make sure that since they complain about expensive meals, that you have reasonably priced, healthy grab-and-go meals for busy schedules. So that some of those people may have a restaurant where there is food that is easy to get, that's not expensive, but they can get really fast on their way out whenever they're going, let's say, in the morning for their business, or whenever they come back in the afternoon for a short break. And finally, for productivity enhancing spaces, you may decide that in your hotel you want to provide printing, scanning, and slide design services to support business tasks without leaving the hotel. So that someone who wants to print papers can do it within the hotel. Someone who wants to scan papers can do it there. Someone who wants to create a slide for the next day and already has it but wants it to look even better, even more appealing, even more professional, can have access to someone that's actually going to help them do that. It could be a service that you want to include in your own hotel that differentiates you from other places. And some of the customers might really appreciate that, as long as, of course, it's not too expensive. Now, when it comes to offering meals, also maybe some of those customers actually want to eat outside, but they don't want to go around looking for the restaurants where some interesting restaurants to eat. You could decide to collaborate with nearby restaurants to offer, for example, discounts for some of the guests so that they can go there and then they can eat whenever they have their breaks or whenever they want to taste something different than maybe what your hotel offers. It could also be a collaboration where you work with those restaurants to go and get the food for your customers and bring it back to the hotel so that they have access to a wider variety than what just your hotel offers as food. And so that's a quick example of what you can do with the value proposition canvas. And that's what we're going to be doing with some of your ideas when you separate them, when you go into your different groups. As usual, if you have any questions, you can start asking them in the WhatsApp group. And of course, once this is done, we'll answer them. In the slides, we have a second example. This, you'll be able to go through it by yourselves. Also later, you'll get this set of slides, and so you'll be able to see exactly what could be, for example, included in an example that's, let's say, an online university. Now, what we need to do, what we're going to do, is start crafting different value propositions based on the ideas you are going to come up with within your different groups. Or if you've already chosen your ideas, the ideas you've already chosen within your different groups. Now, to recapitulate what we've just seen, a value proposition is extremely important because it allows you to craft your product or service so that it really allows you to deliver to your client exactly what it is that they need. We will give you a link so that you can download the value proposition canvas and you can start the journey. You can start discussing with some of your team members. And now this time is yours. We're going to give you a couple minutes to start working on your ideas. If you have any questions as you're going through those ideas, you can ask the questions within your group, or you can come back to the main group here and then quickly type the question. Since this is on WhatsApp, it shouldn't take you too long to move from one to the other. Also, make sure that within your groups, you have someone that's going to be your reporter, essentially, that will present the idea when you're back here. And so right now, if you have any questions, let's go on with the group session. Thank you.